When people talk about umami, what they're referring to is the fifth basic taste alongside salt, sweet, sour, and bitter. The umami taste is triggered by glutamates. These are amino acids found in certain protein-rich foods like animal meats and fish, as well as certain vegetables like tomatoes and mushrooms. They're also found in fermented products and aged products like kimchi, Parmesan cheese, or soy sauce. We humans have receptors in our mouths that detect glutamates, and that's what gives the food its savoury, meaty taste. Whether you realise it or not, you've probably been enjoying umami for your entire life. It's why Parmesan is the king of cheeses. It's why the BLT, even though it's so simple, tastes so unreal. And it's why soy sauce can elevate any food to God tier. The bottom line is this: you can leverage umami to improve the taste of basically any savoury dish. If you find that the dish is missing that sort of savoury note, all you need to do is add in some umami-rich ingredients like dried tomatoes, a bit of Marmite, or maybe some aged cheese. You want some detail? First, let's clear up some ambiguities.
I love the umami flavor.
Stop being so pretentious, Kyle.
Sorry.
Here's mine.
Not only does Kyle sound like a pretentious pleb, he's also made a critical error. Umami isn't a flavour, it's a basic taste. Flavour is actually a combination of taste and smell. Most people don't realise that smell plays such a vital role in how food tastes. It's why, as many people have learned during the pandemic, when you lose your sense of smell, food just doesn't taste as good. So no, as we've already explained, umami isn't a flavour, it's a taste alongside saltiness, sourness, bitterness and sweetness. I kind of like to think of the 5 basic tastes like the primary colours. You can't make blue, red or yellow by mixing together any other colours. They can only be used to make other colours, right? Well, the same thing applies to the basic tastes, right? You can't make bitterness by mixing together saltiness and sweetness. You can't make saltiness by mixing together sweetness and sourness. And you can't make umami by mixing together saltiness and sweetness. Each of those 5 basic tastes are a self-contained taste that can only be used in conjunction with each other to create entirely new flavours. If you go and ask some of the older generation how many tastes exist, they'll probably tell you there's only 4. And that's fair enough, to be honest. We've only known about umami since 1908. Umami was discovered by Kokuni Aikida, a Japanese chemist who was trying to figure out what gave dashi, which is a Japanese stock made from fish and seaweed, its unique flavour. He managed to isolate the source to a seaweed called kombu. It turns out that seaweed is very rich in glutamates, which is what gives it that savoury taste. He coined this new taste umami, which loosely translates to delicious in Japanese. Delicious? Really? Isn't this guy meant to be a scientist? In any case, Aikida continued his work researching glutamates. He founded a company called Ajinomoto and engineered a concentrated form of glutamates bonded with salt, or sodium, that would prove to be one of the most contentious ingredients of the 21st century, Monosodium Glutamate, or, as it's more commonly referred to, MSG. Because yes, you cannot talk about umami without talking about MSG. The prevailing thought for decades has been that MSG leads to headaches, numbness and general feelings of discomfort, an experience questionably dubbed Chinese restaurant syndrome due to the ubiquity of the ingredient in Chinese restaurants and takeaways. But as far as I understand it, the health concerns around MSG have never been proven science. The health concerns can be traced to a letter that appeared in the New England Journal of Medicine that claimed Chinese food brought headaches and so on, and speculated that MSG may have been the cause. This wasn't a journal entry, this wasn't a scientific study. This was literally just a doctor who wrote a letter expressing a hunch that he had that MSG may have been the cause for his personal experience. Actual scientific research has since indicated that MSG is, for most people, completely harmless. MSG is generally recognised as safe as far as the FDA is concerned. Regardless of all of that, people are still scared of MSG. Maybe it's because it sounds like something that has to be made in a factory or a laboratory. And to be honest, that's kind of true. MSG doesn't exist in isolation in nature. It does have to be manufactured. But those glutamates, the things that are actually used to create MSG alongside salt, are derived from natural sources. I like to think of it kind of like vitamin pills. You can't get vitamin D in isolation in nature, right? So for those people who do need more vitamin D, we extract it from foods rich in this stuff like mushrooms, and we manufacture it into a convenient pill form. Our bodies don't care where the vitamin D comes from, it just knows that it is vitamin D. And the same goes for glutamates. It doesn't matter if those glutamates come from Parmesan cheese, soy sauce, or MSG. All the body knows is that it's getting glutamates. Long story short, as Harold McGee put it, MSG is harmless in small and large quantities. If it's so harmless, then how come me ma says it's bad for us? To be honest, it's probably for the same reason your mum doesn't use salt. She read the news once, read an article that said salt was bad for you, and hasn't touched the stuff since. But seriously though, if you're eating Doritos, Pringles, or instant noodles, then you're eating MSG anyway. The stuff is everywhere. But should you actually use it in your cooking? I like to think of MSG like an umami powder. You can use it in any dish that you think needs a savoury kick. I've used it in avocado on toast, pumpkin soup, and God knows how many other dishes. It isn't some kind of special ingredient that you have to use in, certain kinds of dishes. If you think that dish needs a bit more umami, add a little sprinkle. That being said, I do prefer to use natural ingredients high in glutamates if it's possible to do that. There are so many foodstuffs naturally high in glutamates. More seaweed, soy-based products like tofu tempeh or miso, aged cheeses like parmesan or cheddar, fermented products like kimchi, all vegetables like mushrooms and tomatoes are all high in the stuff. But glutamates aren't the whole picture of umami. A student of Aikido, that guy who discovered umami, also discovered that another chemical can give the umami taste. A nucleotide called Inosinic Acid. Both fish and meat are rich in inosinates, and when eaten in conjunction with glutamates, oh god. Then there's another nucleotide called guanylic acid. Guanylates can also be paired with glutamates to give a rich flavour, and these are often found in dried mushrooms, yeast and seaweed. These three flavours, they play off each other, so when you use them in conjunction with each other, they all make the others taste better, as well as improving the flavour of the overall dish. If you combine something rich in glutamates, something rich in inosinates, and something rich in guanylates, you can't go wrong. Tomatoes with beef and dried mushrooms, broccoli with anchovies and seaweed, and so on. But you might be a little bit concerned about adding certain ingredients to certain dishes. What if you don't want to have anchovies with your broccoli, for example? Well, one option is to use these ingredients reservedly. If you use them in small quantities, you can add that umami taste without adding a flavour that's too overpowering. Food writer J. Kenji Lopez Alt uses 3 umami-rich ingredients in a bunch of his recipes. He uses soy sauce, which provides the glutamates, anchovies, which provides the inosinates, and marmite, which provides the guanylates. A combo he calls the umami bomb. But he uses each of these ingredients in such small quantities that their individual tastes are indistinguishable, while still adding that umami taste that we're looking for. In other words, just because you're adding strong ingredients, it doesn't mean that the dish is going to taste of that ingredient. For me, I think the key is experimentation. Try adding a few drops of soy sauce to your next soup, or maybe add a bit of seaweed and dried mushrooms to your next stew and see what happens. If all else fails, then you can turn to MSG. MSG has a more or less neutral flavour, so it can be added to almost anything. Half a teaspoon for a dish that serves 4 people should be plenty to give that subtle, savoury kick that you're looking for. Ideally though, you'll want to pair that up with something else rich in inosinates, like meat or fish, and something rich in guanylates, like dried mushrooms. But if you really don't want to add those flavours, you can also buy these in sodium forms too. They work exactly the same way as MSG. A neutral flavour that can be added to basically any dish. There are so many simple dishes that can blow you away once you throw a few glutamate, inosinate and guanylate rich ingredients in there. And that gives me an idea. Come back next week to find out more.